Our top story this hour, State Minister Redwan calls on Ethiopians to stand together and fortify national unity. Ambassador says America's 60-year heavy sanctions against Cuba have had nothing to do with human rights. And European countries demand answers following US spying them. A very warm welcome to our Days News Hour. I'm Solomon Danye. Thanks for joining me. House Speaker Taggese Chafo conferred with US Senator Hoff, who opposed the recent visa restrictions imposed on Ethiopia by the Biden administration. The two officials have discussed the current situation in Ethiopia and issues across the region. Taggese has briefed Hoff about the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, the law enforcement operation in Tigray, and the ongoing humanitarian assistance in the region, as well as the Ethiopia-Sudan border dispute. The speaker briefed the senator about government's ongoing efforts to address the challenges in Tigray, noting that humanitarian activities are intensified. Mentioning that Ethiopia is getting ready to proceed with the scheduled second filling of GERD, Taggese stressed that it will be done without causing any harm on the downstream countries. He also said Ethiopia wants a peaceful mechanism to the Ethiopia-Sudan border issues. Senator Hoff has expressed his commitment to support Ethiopia. It is to be recalled that Senator Hoff also met with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed yesterday. Meanwhile, Ethiopians are praising Senator Hoff for standing by the truth in Ethiopia at such critical time. A scholar at the State University of California, Professor Alamayo Gebremariam, has praised the senator for his wonderful deliberations on the issues of Ethiopian internal affairs that the government of America is meddling in. Kasan Chanez reviewed the article the professor has written.
A renowned scholar at the State University of California, Professor Alamayo Gebremariam Al-Mariam, praised the Republican Senator Hoff for his wonderful deliberations on the issues of Ethiopian internal affairs that the government of America interferes. Professor Alamayo stated that no American leader ever stood up and defended Ethiopia. When the chips were down under Susan Rice, Joe Biden administration put Ethiopia in its crosshairs and pulled the sanctions trigger. According to Professor Al-Mariam, when the TPLF lobbyists lobbed their lies, dumped lies and disinformation on Capitol Hill, 99 United States senators abandoned Ethiopia and took cover in silence. But according to Al-Mariam, Senator Hoff stood by Ethiopia and did right by Ethiopia. Professor Al-Mariam further accentuated the fact on the ground that when the chips were down and Ethiopia's fair weather friends in the Senate circled their wagons around the TPLF terrorists, Jim stood alone in the Senate chamber holding the red, white and blue and the green, yellow, red, telling it like it is. Given that the scholar divulged that Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey was first elected in 2013, blaming Senator Cory that has not set foot in Ethiopia even once, now he pretends to be a defender of Ethiopian human rights. As a result, Professor Al-Mariam also acknowledged Hoff, who stood up to defend struggling to stand on its own feet, as Cory Booker is working in concert to Ethiopia at its knees in the wrong way.
Foreign Affairs State Minister Redwan Hussein calls upon all Ethiopians to stand together and fortify national unity to defend Ethiopia's sovereignty. Redwan made this remark at a public rally held in the Silt'e zone to protest the current US visa and economic restrictions against Ethiopia. Alula Teklemariam has more.
Large number of Ethiopians took streets of Addis Ababa and other cities for protesting the current U.S. visa restrictions against Ethiopian government officials. Addressing the latest public rally in Silጤ zone of the southern Ethiopia, Foreign Affairs State Minister Redwan Hussein said Ethiopia will never bend the knee for any external intervention.
እንግዲህ ከውጭና መከላከል ማለት ከውጭ ኃይሎች ጋር መተባበር ማቆም ማለት አይደለም።
To defend one's own sovereignty does not mean to quit cooperation with foreign powers. We know we are poor. We thus need donations and support. We also want to cooperatively work with different countries in various aspects. However, when those all donations and support appear to dominate our entire activities, it's better to get started and live with dignity. On the other hand, we can respect each other and cooperate in certain issues regardless of our difference with these countries.
The state minister further called upon all Ethiopians to stand together and fortify national unity to defend Ethiopia's sovereignty.
Internally, we need to nurture and exercise democracy. We also need to avoid backwardness that can be a big challenge to do that. Fighting poverty should be our prime task in our internal affairs. When you reduce receiving foreign funders and build self-resilience, external intrusions inevitably diminish. So, we have to eradicate poverty and strengthen our unity to make that happen.
Ethiopians in home and abroad are increasingly voicing against any foreign intrusion in their domestic affairs.
Cuban ambassador to Ethiopia says U.S. government's 60-year heavy sanction against Cuba has nothing to do with human rights and democracy. The ambassador Vilma Thomas says the only purpose of the U.S. government is to impoverish the Cuban people and overthrow their government. Drawing parallel lines to the recent case in Ethiopia and other nations, she advised sanctioned countries to unite and voice against such unilateral sanctions. Sentaya Tamrat has interviewed the ambassador and dispatched the following report.
In an exclusive interview with ETV English, Cuban ambassador to Ethiopia Vilma Thomas explained how unjust and irrational has been the over 60-year-long and heavy sanction by the U.S. government against their country. She says Cuba is the best example of countries hit by the U.S. sanction.
It is the most unfair and long regime of unilateral sanction imposed ever against any country, the one imposed on Cuba, and has had a very huge impact, economic and human impact on Cuba over 60 years. The 7 out of 10 Cubans have lived all their life under the sanctions imposed by the blockade. The blockade impacts our life, our family life. It means Cuba have not access to medicines that needs for the treatment of the population. We have not access to spare parts we need for the running of our machines, of our transport.
Yes, government's 60-year heavy sanctions against Cuba have nothing to do with human rights and democracy. If humanity is at the heart of the sanctions, they can at least have eased the sanctions during the COVID-19 pandemic.
First of all, let me tell you, all countries in the world, all of us, we have challenges in the matter of human rights. There is no country in the world, not even the U.S., let me start by this, that can say that they have all the human rights are protected in general and that they have fulfilled all the conditions to have the promotion and protection of the human rights 100%. Human rights is used as a pretense. If you really are interested in human rights in other countries, the best way, is just to try to find ways of cooperate. And if there is any issue, there are international organizations that are the proper forum to deal with the situation.
However, the only purpose of the U.S. government is to impoverish the Cuban people and overthrow their government, she stated, substantiating her words with a 1960 memorandum by Deputy Assistant Secretary of State Lester Mallory. The majority of Cubans support Castro, and there is no effective political opposition, she reads.
Every possible means should be undertaken promptly to weaken the economic life of Cuba, denying money and supplies to Cuba, to decrease monetary and real wages to bring about hunger, desperation, and overthrow of the government. When you mention the purpose, this is the purpose. They are even acknowledging that the majority of Cuban population support the government. And despite that, they are saying that they will work to create disenchantment, hunger, and deprivation instead of the people wanting to overthrow the government.
Sanctioned countries shall unite and voice against such unilateral sanctions, she advised.
You have to unite yourself. You have the African Union. You have strong organizations. You are also, there are 54 African countries. You are a strong voice at the international organizations. You have many votes at the UN. Africa united is a strong force at any international organizations. But Africa united. If you let yourself to be divided, it is difficult to achieve anything.
Africa should work aggressively in building democracy to ensure its independence. This remark came from Mesfin Hailu, who has been working to promote democracy all over the state in the US. In his exclusive interview with ETV English, Mesfin stressed the US should promote and support Ethiopia's effort for democracy prevails in the country. Mesfin also highlighted Ethiopia and Ethiopians do not need any intervention to resolve internal matters. Jerusalem Bazaar reports.
The recent U.S. visa restriction imposed over Ethiopian officials by the U.S. comes from supposed concern about the escalating violence and the hardening of regional and ethnic divisions in Ethiopia. However, Mesfin Hailu, who has been working to promote democracy for many years in the U.S., says the EU and the U.S. need TPLF back in power in order to have a puppet government in Ethiopia so that they can twist its arm as they wish.
EU and US government, all of them like to keep TPLF in power because they would do anything for money. They send army all over Africa. Ethiopia has never fought a fight outside the Ethiopian boundaries until TPLF came to power. And Ethiopia has always resisted outside interference, and heroic people fought for their power, for their integrity. But now, that's why they want to keep TPLF, but it's too late. They don't realize how late it is. There is no way that Ethiopia will go back.
As Ethiopia and the U.S. have long-standing diplomatic relations and the U.S. has given priority for democracy, Mesfin expects support for Ethiopia rather than obstacle, reminding the 1948 U.S. Marshall Plan to promote democracy in Western Europe.
Western Europe is a developed democracy and became a really good ally with the U.S. And why not for Africa, for Ethiopia? Why do they want us to be begging for wheat or food all the time? We want to be self-sufficient, we want to be strong in our own, and U.S. should support democracy in our country, Ethiopia.
Historically, Ethiopians know diplomacy and what and how to do to solve their internal matters without any need of external power, Mesfin said.
No one should undermine Ethiopia, and it's an inspiration for black nations, as I say. So no matter what happens, we'll prevail, because as long as we are united, we'll have solutions and we'll go forward. And the only thing I ask the U.S. government is not to use our taxpayer money to repress democracy. We don't want any ethnic factions in Ethiopia. We don't want Bantustan nation in Ethiopia. Ethiopia is one nation, and it has to remain like that, and democracy should be supported, not undermined. Interference by itself is undemocratic. You don't interfere on internal affairs of any nation, let alone Ethiopia, which has a statehood for over 3,000 years. Ethiopia's, we Ethiopians are very proud people, and no, we don't want anybody to interfere and tell us how to do our internal matters.
Mesfin stressed as Africans, in particular Ethiopians, had made a history to realize their freedom through a Pan-Africanism movement. Africans should unite and be independent of any power for the prevalence of democracy on the continent.
That time was Pan-Africanism was promoted, And I think we're very far from that right now. I don't want to see that kind of communism over imperial and the capitalism kind of fight in Ethiopia. We don't want that. But there will be no choice left for Ethiopia if US continue to push this. That's how I feel. The only way we can assure our independence is by forging what we started, establish democracy, so we don't have to we don't want to be depending on any other donor nations. We want to be self-sufficient.
Mesfin and his friends have been trying to be voice for Ethiopians at the US Embassy in Ethiopia on Tuesday. According to Mesfin, they have requested the US in letter to stop its intervention in Ethiopia's internal matter and to support democracy in Ethiopia.
የፓርኩ ከፍተኛ ቦታ ዶዶ ተራራ የሚባል ቦታ አለ። እሱ ነው የፓርኩ ከፍታ ቦታ።
ከሌላው በጣም የተለየ ቦታ ነው። አካባቢውም በጣም ቀዝቀዝ ያለ ቦታ ነው። እንደገናም ደግሞ ያሉት ሪሶርሶች በበቂ ሁኔታ የሚታዩበት የዶዶ ጋራን በፊት ለፊቱ የሚታይ ዋናው የቱሪስት መስህብ ተብሎ የሚጠራው በፊት ለፊቱ የሚታይ ቦታ ነውና
Welcome back. You're watching Addis News Hour. President Sahle-Work Zewde received letters of credence from 10 newly appointed ambassadors. During the event, the diplomats expressed commitment to enhance relationship and cooperation between Ethiopia and their respective countries. Demis Mokrael has more.
President Sahle-Work Zewde received credential letters of new ambassadors from 10 countries. The ambassadors who presented the letters of credence to the president are from Canada, Israel, Bangladesh, Mozambique, Nigeria, Somalia, Belarus, Vietnam, Benin, and Estonia. During the event, President Sahle-Work discussed with the new ambassadors all latest developments in the country and the status of relations between Ethiopia and their respective countries. The newly appointed Canadian ambassador to Ethiopia, Stephanie Jowin, said his country is ready to work with Ethiopia in areas of mutual interest.
Canada and Ethiopia have a strong history of cooperation and collaboration for development. We have interest in mutual development. We also share values where we aspire to more respect for human rights and democracy and free markets. These days, these interests and values are challenged. So I look forward to working with the government of Ethiopia and with all of our partners in Ethiopia to tackle these challenges.
Somali ambassador to Ethiopia, Abdullah Ahmed, for his part, said his country is looking forward to further cement bilateral ties with Ethiopia and thereby maximizing mutual benefit for both nations.
What I will do is I will strive to promote our brotherly relationship between our two countries, and we are neighbors. I think we have got almost close to 2,000 kilometers of border. So I will try to do my best to promote it.
According to spokesperson of Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Dina Mufti, the new diplomats have pledged commitment to enhance relationship and cooperation between Ethiopia and their respective countries.
Over 45 contesting political parties are undertaking preparations to take part in the upcoming 6th general elections across the country on June 21, 2021. Some of these contesting political parties, approached by ETV English, contend that they will take part in the election, providing Ethiopians with more appropriate foreign policies and strategies. Haptam Ashagri reports.
Ethiopia is getting up toward its 6th general election, which is widely believed to be more democratic, free and fair. Accordingly, the National Election Board of Ethiopia is undertaking preparations to hold the upcoming general election across the country on June 21st, 2021. Some contesting political parties approached by Ethiopia said that they will participate in the election, putting in place alternative and more appropriate foreign policies and strategies.
When we come to office, there are so many things which will change. Basically, we'll begin with constitutional reform, which has to. Instead of dividing our people into different nations, nationalities, and people, to unite us around one Ethiopia. We have to do away with ethnic federalism, which we have implemented over the last 30 years systematically. We have to bring that to an end. These basically are the main concerns, the main issues that party has to deal with.
We believe as a party, any foreign policy starts by internal policies. Your internal strengths will have, a very big effect on your policy, on your foreign policy. We respect sovereignty of other countries. We intend to partner with any country in the world for our benefit and for their benefit as well. We are all for world peace and regional peace and internal peace as well. So this can only be established once the country's unity internally, the country's cohesion internally is kept well. So we believe our internal, fragmentation this time, what's happening in our country currently, has made us vulnerable in our foreign policy.
The political parties take the occasion to call for further efforts as part of the efforts needed to bring new ideologies to alleviate problems associated with political crisis in the past.
Over the last half century, we have sacrificed tens of thousands of our citizens. During the Derg regime, that divide was based on class, the revolutionary, the reactionary, the red, the white, the communists, the anti-communists, things of that sort. Because of that, we had to sacrifice tens of thousands of our citizens at that time. That was the us and then divide. And then, with the advent of EPRDF in the political scene of Ethiopia over the last 30 years, this divide was changed or has changed its shape, its form from the class to ethnic politics. The ethnic politics, which we have systematically implemented over the last 30 years, has consumed tens of thousands of lives of our citizens. It ended up in millions of our citizens to be internally displaced.
Many countries, you name it, Sudan, other neighbors, they see us as a weak prey this time. They see us as a prey, as a weak prey. That's why they are trying, all their best to benefit from our uncertainties and unfortunate condition. But this will not stay forever. That I can promise you. Ethiopia has been time and again down and back up. We have been down many times, but we get back up. We dust off and we get back up.
The National Election Board of Ethiopia prepares 15,000 polling stations to undertake the upcoming general election across the country. It was learned.
Members of the terrorist TPLF fugitives who were being searched by the government were arrested and extradited to Ethiopia from Djibouti, according to federal police. The fugitives were among the members of the terrorist TPLF group who had participated in the attack on the Northern Command of the National Defense Force and members of the federal police and fled to neighboring countries. The extradited terrorist TPLF fugitives who have arrived in Addis Ababa on Monday are Habtom Gebreselassie Waliyu, Masela Tamena Shetu, and Cornel Mohammed Beruhu Nur. It is to be recalled that the Federal Police Commission, in collaboration with the Defense Forces and other security institutions, has been hunting down and prosecuting the terrorist TPLF leaders and military officers on suspicion of treason.